The woman gasped deeply and convulsed once more. Then she bolted upright, tearing clean through the restraints that bound her head and hands to the apparatus. Kiara, Ahmad put a reassuring hand on the Sylvari's shoulder, and then yelped. Her skin was hot to the touch, and the faint golden glow that surrounded her had shifted to vivid crimson. She slowly turned to face him, her eyes sharp and focused. "Kiara, can you hear me? What did you see?" The Sylvari woman brought her open hand and spread her fingers wide. A thin vine crawled from her sleeve and began weaving between her splayed digits. "Scarlett," she said. "My name is Scarlett now. Scarlett Briar." "Scarlett then," he snapped. "Tell me, please, what did you see?" Small red thorns sprang up from the vine between Scarlett's fingers. She smiled. "Everything," she said. Okay, hello everybody and welcome to another video. Yesterday Entangled came out, which introduced the next batch of Story for the Living World. If you didn't get it from the title of this video, there are big spoilers here, so be aware. I would recommend you play the patch for yourself, but I will do a quick summary so that you guys know exactly what happened. We're going to have a big analysis on what we've seen and what I at least can deduce from it. So, the story so far has set up that Morjamoth, another Elder Dragon, appears to have become active. We are headed into the Maguma jungle, from which a bunch of vines are spreading out and assaulting different areas across the globe. Us and Destiny's Edge 2.0 in this most recent patch found a big cave that appeared to have a ley line running through it. It was a powerfully magical place. And in a chamber in this area, we found a machine. This was Omad's machine. Omad's machine was most talked to us about a little bit in Season 1 of The Living World, but in particular there is a really great story up on the ArenaNet website. You'll find a link in the description called What Scarlett Saw. This is the machine that made Scarlett go insane. Up until this point, she had just been a very curious Sylvari that had stayed with many different cultures and peoples and learned much different alchemy and technology. But when she started working with an Asura named Omad together, they plugged her into a machine that was built on a ley line hub, very similar to the one beneath Lion's Arch. And when she went inside it, she claimed to see the eternal alchemy in its entirety. It cracked her mind, she went bonkers, and then eventually we, the heroes, killed her. You can read that whole story, as I say, at the link down below. I've just read you a small excerpt of it. Well, in this most recent patch, we found Omad's machine. Not only did we find it, but we powered it up, and we, the player character, went inside. So what Scarlett saw, we have now seen to an extent. There is one slight caveat to this. We didn't see exactly what Scarlett saw. There is dialogue that states that since Scarlett used the machine, she seems to have modified or changed it in some way. So when we go inside, we do seem to get a slightly different vision. I'm going to play that vision for you guys now. The cutscene in its entirety is very interesting. We're sort of seeing the universe. It's a very bold move for ArenaNet to add this to the game. And as you can imagine, it's very cryptic. That's what this video is going to be about.
We must all play our parts.
I will clarify, I cannot be confident, and I don't think anyone should be confident, that every little thing in this cutscene means something. Obviously, there's been a lot of artistic license used here. If you see, say, one of the orbs and there's weird, flare or light glowing and circling it somehow, I really don't think you can take that to metaphorically mean something in particular. I have my doubts that the devs went into so much detail about it. But there are obviously massive conclusions we can draw from it, so let's just go step by step. At first, we seem to be just sort of floating in the ether, right? Somehow, maybe we've been plugged into the ley lines. You can actually look at what Scarlett saw the story for a great description of Scarlett seeing pretty much the exact same thing. It reads, inside Omad's machine, the universe stretched out before her, an endlessly vast star-flecked sea. She moved through it, struggling against its currents, floating effortlessly above them, or standing perfectly still as strange lights and magical energy swirled around her. That's pretty much our experience there too, just for a couple of seconds at the very least. One thing you guys might not have noticed about this early part, yeah, there's weird vague images in the background, but there's also whispering going on. I couldn't decipher all of the whispers, some of them are really quiet and very hard to pick out, but definitely you can hear a character saying, "I see it," and it sounds to me like maybe this is something Scarlett would have said. As soon as I heard the "I see it" whisper, I thought immediately, oh, maybe she says "I see it" in the story, but she actually doesn't, so maybe this won't be coming from her. And another great line that you can hear, pick out very clearly, is the pale tree speaking, and it's her saying, "Do not question the dream, we must all play our part." Now, in the What Scarlett Saw story, the pale tree actually approached Scarlett directly and said, "Look, you have to stop looking into this, please. You're going to unleash something terrible. Please, you're going to be dangerous if you're not with me. Please stop looking." And it seems that the pale tree almost kind of talks to us here too, but that's actually sort of an echo of the past. Funnily enough, that is reused dialogue. The line from the pale tree, "Do not question the dream, we must all play our part," is spoken during the personal story. Only during the personal story of Sylvari characters, but it comes at a time when Traherne has just returned to the Gw2 from Ore in very early game stuff. If you're playing a Sylvari character, you can visit the Pale Tree with Kaith, and the Pale Tree says, "I would like the Valiant," you the player character, "to meet my eldest," speaking about Traherne. And Kaith responds by saying, "Wait, is Traherne back from Ore already? Are you sure it's wise to introduce these two?" And then the Pale Tree responds with, "Do not question the dream, we must all play our parts." Why is that being echoed here now? And especially to characters who aren't Sylvari, for example. Well, the obvious answer is just that they didn't have the time to get some voice acting from the Pale Tree, for example, some new stuff. But there must be some relevance there. Do not question the dream. And it's sort of similar to what she was pleading with Scarlett before. Don't question, don't look. I've got this handled, almost. Whether this suggests that Traherne or Kaith maybe are going to be coming into the story a bit more, I don't know. There are certainly other suggestions in the patch that Traherne in particular might come forward a bit. You guys might notice in Season 2 of The Living World, there's been nothing of real Destiny's Edge so far, just Destiny's Edge 2.0. So I wonder, are we going to be seeing Kaith? They set up these mysteries about Kaith, about how Scarlett found out something about Kaith. Maybe those are still on the table, and maybe that's something they're hinting at, but really, I can't pick it out. Anyway, so from here, the cutscene shows us a great image of a big white tree. This, of course, is the pale tree that we are seeing. And for our perspective of it, we only see it for a moment or two before, zooming into it. In the What Scarlett Saw story, we get a lot more elaboration there. It seems Scarlett had a much more comprehensive image of the pale tree. She described seeing the Sylvari hanging from its boughs and then falling, and basically this entire image was encapsulating the life cycle of a Sylvari. The birth, the traveling, and death specifically, she mentions. And this actually enraged Scarlett. She hated that they could be so easily summed up, and she didn't want to be a part of that. That sort of began her big decision to be very independent from the pale tree and everything. For us, we just sort of zoom into it very quickly. We do know for a fact this is the pale tree. While we were having story in Scarlett's house, of course, over these most recent patches, there was an image of basically what we've seen in Omad's machine, and everyone says, wow, look, this shows the universe, this shows everything with a pale tree at the center, and that's what Scarlett drew, and it's the same image that we're seeing here. So by zooming into the pale tree, the scene now changes completely, and we end up zooming back out of the pale tree. But the pale tree is being represented as a large orb in the center of the screen. Around this big central orb that is the pale tree, or now looks rather different, kind of black. It looks like it's a starry sky, if anything. Around this are 6 smaller orbs, all in fixed locations. The structure of the image here is very reminiscent of one of the areas in Guild Wars 1 where we travel to one of the realms of the gods, the realm of torment. When you opened your map there, you should see the image on the screen in the background right now. It looks very similar to this image we've currently got inside Scarlett's machine. Is that a coincidence or not? Personally, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think they drew their artistic inspiration deliberately from this map of the realm of torment, but it doesn't mean what we're seeing here is the realm of torment. It's just a metaphorical similarity. But each of these 7 orbs you can see on the screen are all seated within an armillary sphere. Now, if you don't know what that is, think about like a globe, but a globe for celestial space. Basically, all of these metallic rings and rivets, they're all serving as points of reference for like celestial latitude. So like you've got the equator there. It allows people to be able to tell, you know, the celestial north from south and so forth. Navigation through space, basically. So the fact that each is seated within one of these suggests, especially for the big one in the middle, that what we're looking at here isn't just Tyria, in which case, you know, it would just be a globe, but it's more than Tyria. It's encapsulating all of the space around Tyria, perhaps the solar system of Tyria. If you look at the art itself of the giant sphere in the middle, it's filled by a big white glow. Now, this perhaps, some people will tell you, could be representing the sun of some kind, and what we're looking at is the Tyrian solar system. Or maybe you might think it's something even bigger. It is the entire universe we're seeing here in this big central orb, of which the pale tree lies within. Funnily enough, Scarlett also described seeing an orb in her story, in her vision. Here's a line directly from it. She saw Tyria as a life-sized globe fixed in place among cosmic storms and massive clouds of potentiality. So let's assume for now then that this big thing is Tyria in the middle, and I'll go into some other interpretations later. But to look at the art specifically on it, to me, I believe this is the full universe. The fact that it's got the armillary sphere around it, the fact it looks like it's got these little white specks that perhaps could be different stars. So if it's the entire universe, what exactly is this big glowing thing in the center meant to be? Well, if you ask me, this could be some representation of the magic within the Tyrian universe, or Tyria as a world, I guess. Rather than like a sun or something, this is like representing the amount of magic that has been swelling within Tyria for so long, growing and growing and growing. And maybe if we saw this image again in 100 to 500 years, you'd see it be even larger. Either that, or the white glow is just meant to be, hey, this is the pale tree somehow. So what about the other orbs? Well, one thing about the other orbs is they don't have that big white glowy thing in the center. And the first thing probably most people who watch the cutscene would be able to gather from it straight away is, what if these orbs are meant to be the dragons? This is an interpretation of the image that fits very, very nicely, okay? Each orb is of a different color, and they seem to represent the themes of the various Elder Dragons. So, top left we have a dark blue orb. This could absolutely be the Deep Sea Dragon, of which we've seen very little of in Guild Wars 2, but we know that he exists. We see to the right of that there is a purpley kind of orb. This could very much represent the Crystal Dragon Kraukatoric. Below the Deep Sea Dragon we have a green orb, which absolutely could be Mordramoth. A black orb over on the right, this would be Zaitan. A red orb down on the bottom left, which would be the Fire Dragon Primordus. And lastly, a light blue orb, which could be representing Ice or the Elder Dragon Jormag. It works very well. Further, as the cutscene plays, each of these spheres, they glow up, they become dislodged, and eventually the green one, the Mordramoth one, supposedly, slams into the center, transforming the entire color of Tyria, or our universe as it were, and this is accompanied by the sound of a dragon roaring. It seems like the main thing the devs want you to take away from this cutscene is, hey, these are all the Elder Dragons, this is our world, and look, Mordramoth is now really active. If they're all competing over Tyria as they're spinning around the world, and now Mordramoth has just gone in and like taken over the center, maybe this is showing us, maybe it's a vision of the future or the current state of affairs right now, the Mordramoth is sort of winning this fight. And this is exactly why now we're seeing so much more activity coming from Mordramoth. We're seeing his vines tapping into all the waypoints. We're seeing him attack places way across Tyria because he has this access now. Why is he now in the center instead of the other Elder Dragons? Well, you can attribute that to the actions of Scarlett Briar shortly before she died, where she herself tapped into one of the most potent leyline hubs and somehow spurred him into action. Further, to go back on this weird idea of the white stuff in the middle being magic, we know that Elder Dragons love to consume magic. That's what they want, consuming magic. Well, you'll notice none of these Elder Dragon orbs seem to have that white glow in the center of them. So what if this is them heading into Tyria to try and consume that white glow? And even consider this, what if now that Mordramoth has usurped the giant orb in the center, the orb in the center now goes and sits where, and this is a part of the cutscene we wouldn't in theory see, but that the orb orb in the center has to go somewhere, right? Well, what if that now goes off to the side? And now it's like Morgemoth is in control of this universe, and this is the primary one, this is the predominant one, and this is the one with the magic in it. Obviously, this isn't really reflected in the cutscene, but it's an interesting thought. There's a lot of stuff about how what we're seeing is supposedly the eternal alchemy, and if you read the What Scarlett Saw story, she talks about how what she is seeing here in this image that we're sort of seeing too is a system that self-perpetuates forever, but she has learned that this cannot be true. No system can loop forever. Something has to evolve or adapt and change. And so this is what offended her so much about what she was seeing. And so this idea that one orb usurps the other and they continuously do this represents something to do with the cycle of the Elder Dragons coming to Tyria, falling asleep, and then waking up. Maybe on some weird line it does fit. If you rewatch the scene too, sticking with the idea that the orbs all represent dragons, you'll notice that at first, all of the orbs are almost dormant, they're not moving, they're in fixed locations. And then suddenly they start to light up, one after the other, in various order. They light up and then begin to spin around. Well, if these are Elder Dragons, what could that be representing? Maybe it's representing the fact that the Elder Dragons are waking up. And for a long time, this theory works too. Who was the first Elder Dragon we knew to wake up? Primordus. Now, note, he didn't wake up in Guild Wars 1, he woke up slightly after Guild Wars 1, he just like stirred in Guild Wars 1, but he was the first Elder Dragon to wake up. That was in the year 1120 AE, a long time ago for Guild Wars 2's terms, and here you will see what is the first orb to light up. The fiery one that we were suggesting could be Primordus. He moves. Now what's the next orb to light up? Well, now it looks like the Deep Sea Dragon orb is lighting up and moving. Well, we as a community, the people who live on Tyria, don't actually know when the Deep Sea Dragon woke up. They barely know it exists. So because we don't know that, it could totally be plausible that first Primordus woke up, then the Deep Sea Dragon did. Well, who was the next Elder Dragon we did know woke up? Who woke up after Primordus? Jormag did. That was in the year 1165 AE. And what's the next orb we see light up on this cutscene? It's Jormag's orb, the light blue one in the bottom right. Now that one has started to move. So then who woke up next? Well, next we see the green orb, the Morgemoth orb, light up and start moving. Well, again, Morgemoth, the people of Tyria didn't really know anything about. We had no date for when Morgemoth woke up, so it's totally plausible that he woke up now. Now, here's the thing. Some people will tell you, no, Morgemoth was the most recent to wake up. Morgemoth woke up when Scarlett woke him up very recently. But what if that's not true? It's already quite apparent that Morgemoth seems based somewhere in the Maguma jungle, and we've had stories over the past 250 years of the Maguma jungle slowly dying away, and this being attributed to the activities of Elder Dragons. Well, if that was Morgemoth killing off the Maguma jungle for so long, then perhaps he woke up a long time ago. He just hasn't been active until Scarlett prodded him into activity very recently. So who's next that would wake up on the timeline? Well, it should be Zaitan that wakes up next, and then Kraukatoric woke up most recently. That's where this breaks apart. Instead of showing Zaitan waking up first, it shows the Kraukatoric orb waking up first, and then the Zaitan one after. This is the wrong order. So you can either drop the idea completely, or you can try and shoehorn it in and make it work. I do find it curious that the Zaitan orb, the black orb, when it lights up, instead of glowing like a darker black, it actually glows green. So maybe you can say, alright, the Zaitan orb is actually Morgemoth, and what we thought the Morgemoth orb was the Zaitan orb. And if you do reverse them, it works perfectly. First Primordus wakes up, then the Deep Sea Dragon, then Jormag, then Zaitan, then Kraukatoric, and lastly Morgemoth wakes up shortly after Kraukatoric because of Scarlett tampering with the ley lines, and it works flushly. But then we have another problem. The whole cutscene's premise seems to be to show that now Morgemoth is in charge. And under this proposition, it would actually be the Zaitan orb that takes over Tyria in the center and makes everything glow green. And that just doesn't make sense. I mean, you can keep trying to shoehorn it and say, oh, well, look, Zaitan, yeah, he's black, but he's also green because of poison, and, you know, it's the color of the risen and so forth. And that's why it's glowing green. And this entire cutscene is a double bluff. The devs want you to think that it's showing Morgemoth is in control now, but actually it's showing that very recently Zaitan came in control, and instead he's still there and he's more dangerous than ever, and now it's like Zaitan's realm or something, and this is some big double bluff. I'm not going to go so far, but it's a wild accusation you could throw out there. I must admit, I am a little bit scared that the devs just made a mistake. It's not unlike them to make mistakes. I think if you follow the series for long enough, you're going to catch a fair few things. And I am worried that the reason these last 2 orbs are coming in the wrong order is because some dev that wasn't 100% on the lore thought, oh, well, clearly Zaitan was the most recent to wake up because he's the one we just killed in the main story, right? And then it must have been Kralkatorrik before him because we had a book that came out set 5 years before the story that showed Kralkatorrik woke up then. And I'm scared they just kind of messed it up. So I'll throw that out to you guys as well so you can be scared too. Am I being a bit over the top with that or not? You'll have to let me know. But that brings us to another point, talking about this Zaitan thing. What about Zaitan? Didn't we kill Zaitan? Shouldn't his status as, like, defeated actually be reflected here somehow? The Black Orb, let's assume the Black Orb we originally said was Zaitan actually is Zaitan, right? This doesn't act any differently to any of the other orbs throughout the animation. I was sort of expecting, I thought I saw the first time I watched the cutscene, the Black Orb activate, start swirling around, and then completely just disappear off the screen and not return. And this sort of represented the fact that Zaitan had been defeated. But that's not true. It stays there on the screen the whole time, just looking green instead of black. So what is this trying to tell us? Is it trying to tell us that we, again, didn't really defeat Zaitan, that nothing about this system has actually changed? Or maybe the events of the personal story are being reflected here. Maybe this is the reason why Zaitan's orb is out of order to the others and his lights up last. Maybe it's showing, instead of the order that the Elder Dragons woke up, the reverse order that they're defeated in. So we'll defeat Zaitan first and then Kralkatorrik next, and we work our way backwards. Again, it's a weird speculation, but it's something that might explain why the order is off. Certainly there are some unanswered questions, even if you do look at this model as representing the Elder Dragons. But what else could the orbs be? Now, personally, I believe the orbs are representing multiple things, and that's owing to the fact that this is supposed to be a representation of the eternal alchemy, okay? When we get out, I, as an Asura character, your dialogue will change slightly depending on your race. I believe what the Sylvari say sound kind of foreboding. It makes you seem a bit like your Scarlett 2.0 or 3.0 since Aaron was supposed to be. But my person said, look, I just saw the entire eternal alchemy, right? The idea of the eternal alchemy, it's not really a religion of the Asura. It's just something that many of them believe in, right? It's this idea that everything is just a cog, a part of a greater machine. And what we're seeing here is the whole machine. That's what we're saying. What this image was the entire eternal alchemy. In the center we had our known universe, and then there's all these other moving pieces around it. I'm going to point us back to something I've talked about a few times on the channel, but continues to be one of the greatest things of like mysteries, and particularly to do with this. A quest chain in Guild Wars 1 that ended with a quest called The Path to Revelations. In this, we're talking with an Asura who's mentioning a lot of things about the eternal alchemy, but there was an Asura who was very interested in the human gods. It may come as no surprise to you guys that we now have 6 Elder Dragons, 6 orbs on this screen, and we also have 6 human gods. In this research with this Asura back in the first game, we find these facets of the human gods. They supposedly are representations, other, sides of the human gods, but they appear as dragons in the game. We go around fighting each of these facets, one dragon per god, so that this Asura can read their energy readings, and eventually he realizes their coordinates pointing him somewhere. So I'll give you guys some quotes from this great quest chain that's talking about the eternal alchemy and what they believe in. So one thing he says is that to the Asura there are no gods, there is only the eternal alchemy. It's the greater scheme of existence in which we are all a part. Your gods are pieces within this design, their manifestation mere facets in the geometric whole. Doesn't this sound very fitting with this image we're seeing in this cutscene? Another quote, gods are a part of this world, he says. Think of these facets, these dragons we're killing, as any number of possible manifestations of those gods. Later on, he mentions something that sounds very Scarlettish when he's talking about Cormyr. He says, the stories of your god Cormyr fascinate me the most. To think that a mortal, a human no less, could transcend into something greater. Was it all a part of the eternal alchemy? Was there some hidden design that preordained it would happen this way? Or does a power exist that can go against the schemes of fate? Think about how Scarlett was affected after she saw what we just saw. She wanted to be that power that could go against the schemes of fate. She wanted to be that different thing. And this Asura is almost saying, yeah, and look, you've got a human god Cormyr that managed to achieve this. So this quest chain culminates with you headed to a very specific place on the planet called Varahar Fells, namely a forest in Varahar Fells that we'd always known to be a place where the realm of Tyria was very close to the mists, and it meant they had many magical properties. When we arrived there, the Asura says, right, look, this is where all 6 of these facets are culminating. They're all combining right here. It sounds a lot now with the knowledge we currently have that this could have just been some kind of a ley line hub. Once you've defeated them all, a mysterious spirit appears who speaks to you in this weird snake-like weird alien tongue that could be translated by players. This is a very famous thing from Guild Wars lore, and they said to you this nice little rhyme that said, an offering to those who seek beyond the mists, beyond the dreams, on distant shores of a land unwaking, answers there lie in waiting. Well, we've heard this before, this reference to dreams, and of course the Sylvari with their dream, and more cryptic stuff that has always suggested big answers in Guild Wars 2, basically. This was expanded on Guild Wars 2, as I've talked to you guys about on my channel before, by a book in the Demon Priory that once again you have to translate, but it's talking about the later years of the Asura we were working with life. And he says, I believe Varifar Hells will be my tomb, for I have no desire to leave this valley of tumbled gods. The facets have been revealed, and the cipher as well, I have mastered them. A greater understanding of the eternal alchemy is within my reach. Human gods, char gods, Norn animal totems, they are all a part of the all-encompassing eternal alchemy. I'm humbled as never before by the grandeur of it and my own ability to conceive such vastness. Is that what we're seeing here? This may seem slightly off topic, but it should ground you guys in the height of what the eternal alchemy is and how all similar these varying dialogues are, despite, you know, one being from Guild Wars 1 and this stuff being in Guild Wars 2. So here's the idea, basically. As well as being dragons, these orbs, yes, probably do represent the 6 dragons, but as well as that, they represent more. Everything is connected. They're all facets of the same things, okay? These 6 orbs could also be representing the human gods. It's long been a community theory that the gods and the dragons are the same. It's something I've always been highly skeptical of and resistant to, but it's become much more plausible since the confirmed existence of a 6th Elder Dragon. Before, you know, the numbers didn't even match up, but now that Morgemoth is a real thing, the theory holds a lot more weight, but it's still hard to work perfectly, and I'll demonstrate why to you guys right now, okay? So let's say that each of these orbs is also a god, right? So we're pairing Elder Dragons with gods right now. So let's do the easy one. Bottom left, fiery orb, Primordus. We've got a fiery god of war, Balthazar. So let's say that's Balthazar down there. Let's look at another pretty simple one, the light blue one, okay? Dwayna, this has always been her color, her theme. She's the goddess of air. Let's stick that one up there. Morgemoth, the green one, Melandru, the goddess of earth. So let's stick that one there. That's 3 out of 6. The purple one, Kraukatoric, crystals. Lissa is a very purple-themed god. Then we have the light blue orb down in the bottom, the Elder Dragon of Ice, Jormag, where we have a god of ice, Grenth. So that links up nicely too. The last one is this black orb, which you can only pair with the only remaining god, which is Cormyr. Now, the Cormyr connection might seem kind of weird, but do consider this. Cormyr usurped her power from Abaddon, who had the Realm of Torment, which was a very black and devastating and dangerous area. So the black, in a weird way, is still on theme with Cormyr, in theory. But here's the thing, it was always suggested that Abaddon's realm was only like that because it had been made a prison for him by the other gods. That wasn't necessarily his natural way, this dark, corrupt, evil way. That wasn't necessarily his natural way. And now, supposedly, Cormyr has completely renovated the Realm of Torment. Now, we don't know exactly what that means, but are we to assume that Cormyr, who instead of the god of secrets is now the goddess of truth, has the same kind of color and theme and sensibilities as Abaddon had? Wasn't the whole point of Nightfall to show that by creating Cormyr as a god instead of Abaddon so that she could take his power, that would change and almost remove the evil, if you were? And besides, it gets even more complicated and stupid. Abaddon was supposedly the god of water, which for a time at least Cormyr took over from him. So that would put them not on the black orb, that would put them on the deep sea dragon's orb, surely, the one over on the top left. But we have that as Dwayna. Well, actually, if you think about it, Dwayna is technically supposed to be the goddess of air, and the more fitting orb for her to be on would be Kraukatoric, who's the elder dragon of lightning and air and so forth, but that would put her over there in the purple area, which is where we currently have Lissa. And technically, Lissa is now the goddess of water, who supposedly took it from Cormyr, which means that she should be where Dwayna was originally, but now we have Abaddon, and it just spirals out of control. Maybe we're at a standstill with where I've speculated to at this point, but it gets kind of complicated. If this model is truly gonna work, then it would mean that the gods and the fact that they've shifted the elements they own around in the 250 years since they've left would mean they're very different to what we last knew. Now, there is some credence to this. This all about, maybe not coincidentally, coincides with the time that the gods stopped interacting with humans so much. So while we as humans still sort of associate Gw2 as being the blue goddess of, you know, like air and whatever, and you try and match colours and you'd put maybe Gw2 up there, maybe now Gw2 is more of a purpley kind of god, and that's because she shifted over to where Lyssa was, because Lyssa's shifted over to where Abaddon was, and so forth. Either way, you go into very deep speculation to try and make this model work, and it's nowhere near as clear-cut as, look, you've got a big orb in the center that's encapsulating our physical world, and around it are the various orbs representing dragons. But let's go back. Lastly, I'd like to quickly go back to what I was originally talking about with the armillaries, okay? If the center globe is supposed to be like a big celestial map depicting the entire universe, then what about the other orbs? Because they also all have armillaries. So what if these aren't just dragons, but they're actually representing other realms? Now, the gods, which is an interpretation we just tried to squeeze in, all own their own realms. You know, Balthazar has the Fissure of Woe, a fiery afterlife of oblivion. And so maybe this makes a lot more sense. The bottom left orb is both Primordus the dragon, but also a representation of an entire realm of existence. And the figurehead over that realm of existence, a great powerful entity born from it, was perhaps Balthazar. And through this, perhaps you can see that they're all connected. I believe at the very least, these 6 orbs surrounding the large central one all represent different dragons and different realms of existence. They are all set as celestial globes of some kind. You can see in all of them what appears to be some kind of starry skies, you know, depictions of different universes, other realms of existence within the mists. This is what we're seeing. And the most curious thing about all of this then is what happens when one of these other realms tries to wrestle control from our one in the middle, just as we're seeing in this cutscene that Morgemoth seems to do. I put to you this idea. Elder dragons are there to eat magic. When they eat magic, where does it go? What if an Elder Dragon is just a conduit for magic? When Morgemoth, who is now active in Tyria, is eating magic, he's trying to send it back to wherever his orb is, his realm of existence. If Primordus, for example, is eating magic, what if he's just sending that back to the Fissure of Woe? Magic is a finite resource and everyone's competing over it. Think about any time we've ever seen one of the other realms of existence. They are miserable places. The Fissure of Woe is an eternal battlefield filled with death and misery. The same goes for the underworld. The realm of torment was pretty much just a giant torture chamber. And so what if this is the idea? Tyria, the larger one in the center, builds magic over time while perhaps the other realms are losing it, and eventually the cycle begins anew and they decide we want some of this magic. Another orb has to vie for control for it, or else their realm may fall into destruction. And the physical manifestation of what I'm talking about, this crazy theory, would be the Elder Dragons rising. Think about this. Abaddon was a god that was cast down and punished by the other gods. Why? Why was he punished? Because he gave magic freely to the races of Tyria. Why was this such a crime? Well, maybe because the gods appreciated that this was a coveted resource, and in order to keep the realms in balance, in check, to perpetuate the cycle, the magic had to be limited and controlled, and Abaddon just flew in the face of that. And for that, he was punished. Don't forget that supposedly, at least for humans, when you die, your spirit will be sent to one of these other realms to live in an afterlife. And what do the characters say to us the second we fall out of Omad's machine? Oh, I think they're dead. Maybe that's just Bran being an idiot. Or maybe that is some kind of hint that in order to see this stuff, you have to get a little bit closer to the afterlife. Something to note as well, in the background it would appear that there are a lot more slots for potential orbs, as if there might be more realms, more Elder Dragons, more gods even, whatever you want to say. This is one of those things though, I sort of feel like, as I stated at the start of the video, you can't take everything to mean something, and something tells me this is just a bit of flair on the screen rather than the actual hinting at extra things, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just ArenaNet leaving doors open for future stuff. At the very least, it doesn't seem relevant for what we're supposed to know for now, just that maybe there could be other potential things in the universe. Anyway, it seems at the very least ArenaNet know where they're going with the story. We should get more elaboration soon enough. Let me know what you think about my speculations, guys. If you've got anything to add at all, especially about those whispers, I'd love to hear more. Where does the Pale Tree even fit into all of this, right? Is the Pale Tree like a 7th god then of some kind? You know, like that is the ambassador of this realm? I don't know. Anyway, thanks guys. Hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time.